Welcome to this third part of our Introduction to Modeling Biological and Ecological Systems. In this module, we will take a look at developing some simple empirical models. This is just an introduction. We will be taking a deeper dive into empirical modeling in the next module. Upon completing this module, you should be able to understand how to identify mathematical relationships between variables. You will need a pencil and a piece of paper to complete this module. Previously, we've described, in general terms, what a model is. At its most general, a model takes a set of inputs, termed predictor or explanatory variables, and transforms them into a set of outputs, termed predicted or response variables, through some mathematical operations. So what goes on in the black box model on the figure presented here? Let's look at some really simple examples of what might be in the model box. Suppose, for example, we want to understand the relationship between vehicle weight and the gasoline efficiency, miles per gallon, of a variety of different automobiles. A good start to understand this relationship is to look at relevant data sets that have different miles per gallons associated with different vehicle weights. In the graph presented here, we have plotted this data set using green points with the explanatory variable, vehicle weight, on the x-axis, and the response variable, miles per gallon, on the y-axis. Visually inspecting this plot suggests that there is a relationship between these two variables. As vehicle weight increases, miles per gallon tends to decrease. This isn't necessarily true in every case, but there does seem to be a general trend between these two variables. That general trend is captured by the blue line on the chart. Next, let's talk about a model of this relationship, meaning what is the mathematical relationships that can describe the blue line running through the data. We can certainly imagine other functions to capture this relationship besides a line, but in this case, the chart suggests a line could probably capture the general trend in the data reasonably well. We will develop the specific mathematical equation by identifying parameters for the line, slope and intercept in this case, by examining individual data points, trying to find the best line, the line that minimizes the difference between the individual observations and the model line. Because we have selected a line as our model, we have a mathematical construct we can use for our model, an equation that describes a line with miles per gallon as the predicted or response variable and vehicle weight as the explanatory variable. The coefficients shown here, a slope of minus 0.0065 and intercept of 558.5, are parameters of this model, and these specific values are those that result in a line that minimizes the total differences between the model prediction, the line, and the real-world observations, the data points. We will describe how to determine these best fit parameters in the next module, but before we do, let's look at one more simple example. Here, the question we are exploring focuses on quantifying the relationship between atmospheric carbon dioxide and air temperatures, or more correctly, the air temperature anomaly, the difference between the actual air temperatures and the mean of the air temperatures over the period of interest, using data from a long-term monitoring station located at the top of Mauna Loa, Hawaii. This station has been collecting data on both CO2 levels and air temperatures at this site since 1880, as shown on the chart. Again, the actual real-world observations are shown as points on the chart. And again, there appears to be a relationship between these two variables. As CO2 levels have increased, air temperatures have also increased at a roughly proportional rate. This suggests that we could model this relationship between carbon dioxide and air temperature using a line, as long as we can determine best fit slope and intercept values. As soon as we provide these coefficients, we can use the resulting empirical model to estimate the air temperature anomaly we would expect for a given CO2 level. This model is not perfect. It clearly doesn't exactly predict all of the individual observed results, but it does capture the overall trend in the data. There is no doubt other factors at work that cause the model results to deviate from the actual observations. But nonetheless, this simple model can explain roughly 70% of the variability in the air temperature by considering only CO2 effects. Again, we need a procedure for estimating the best fit coefficients for this model, as well as a metric to describe how good this model is at representing reality. Those will be developed in the next module, but for now, we will focus just on the basic concept of capturing the relationship between variables in a system in mathematical form. Let's do an exercise. We want to explore the relationship between two variables, in this case between air temperature, the explanatory variable, and water uptake by a tree, the predicted response variable. In general, water uptake is low at low air temperatures because it is too cold to evaporate water from the leaves. It increases at moderate temperature as the tree starts to lose water via evapotranspiration, and then levels off and ultimately starts to decline as the high temperatures force stomates on the leaves to close, reducing evaporation from the leaf surfaces. To get started, let's look at this graphically. We will create a plot with air temperature, the explanatory variable, on the x-axis, and water uptake, the response variable, on the y-axis. What might be appropriate units for each of these axes? For air temperature, degrees C or F would be appropriate. For water uptake, we need a mass per unit time unit to account for this factor. Then we'll add some points to the chart that reflect the relationship described above. At lower temperatures, water uptake is relatively low due to low evaporation rates, but increases as the air temperature increases. However, at high air temperatures, water uptake can be reduced due to water stress. Next, let's imagine a mathematical function that would capture this relationship. In prior examples, we used a line to fit the data. Would that work here? The answer is sort of, but a line clearly doesn't capture some of the nonlinearities in this relationship, particularly related to the declining water use observed at high air temperatures. Is there a better alternative? Consider a second-order polynomial, a function of the form y equals a plus bx plus cx squared. Will this function provide a better fit to the data? The answer is yes, but at the expense of an additional parameter to have to estimate. There are 3 parameters in the model, a, b, and c, which will have to be determined by fitting to the data set. However, if we need a reasonably accurate relationship, fitting an extra parameter would likely be worth the trouble, especially if we were concerned about the effects of higher air temperatures. Now it's your turn. Repeat this exercise for 2 variables in a system you are interested in. What might that relationship look like? Draw a 2-dimensional plot that shows the relationship between 2 of your components and any other relationships you were thinking about. Each of the elements in the relationship will occupy their own axis on the plot. The relationship between the elements is the line, or some other function, you draw on the chart. So, to recap, a key requirement of modeling is establishing mathematical relationships between an explanatory variable and a response variable. The relationship can take many forms, and one of the simplest is a line. However, the appropriate functional form depends on the underlying processes that control the system variables. Second, data is useful, and in most cases required, to establish both the functional form of a relationship and the values of model parameters. Virtually all models have parameters, and complex models can have many, tens to hundreds. Parameters are the dials of the model that allow the model to be tuned to the observations of reality. In the next module, we will begin developing some simple empirical models and explore techniques for constructing and evaluating these models.